I'd like to call the meeting to order on this June 1st. If you would join me in our Pledge of Allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have public comment time. Have anyone? Don't see anyone in the gallery. So we'll move on. If everyone has had a chance to look at the agenda for today. Have any questions on that? I'll entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
Madam Chair, I'll move the agenda as printed.
Do I hear a second?
Madam Chair, I'll second.
Okay, we have any discussion, any additions or corrections to our agenda for today? All those in favor of accepting the agenda say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We have our agenda accepted for today. Taking a look at our minutes from May 18th. We'll get a chance to look those over. I would entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I'll move the minutes be accepted.
I'll second.
For a second, thank you. Any discussion on the minutes from the 18th? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes have been approved. All right. Next on our agenda, we have Joel. Good morning.
Good morning. Joel Rampton, Facilities Manager. I will be here today to approve the hire of our seasonal custodial helper position. And we have found Avery Leisman. We'd like to hire him at 11, step 1 at $15 an hour.
I'll make a motion to hire seasonal custodian helper Avery Least.
I will second that motion.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion, any questions about the hiring of Avery? No discussion. We'll take the vote. All those in favor of hiring Avery Leastman, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Good job.
Thanks, Joel.
Ryan?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Brian Cruz, County Sheriff. A couple items before you here this morning. The first is the hiring of 3 individuals. All of these will be at level B22, step 1, which is $20.53 an hour, and all these are effective June 14th. So the first is Eamon McCormick, and that's a part-time corrections position. The second is Robert Zeal, and that's a part-time dispatcher, and then Autumn Riber, and it's a full-time dispatch position.
Can we do this together?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to hire the 3 requests, part-time corrections officer Eamon McCormick, part-time dispatcher is it Zool?
Zeal.
Zeal, full-time dispatcher Autumn Riber.
I'll second that motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a motion. It has been seconded. We're taking 3 positions here at once. Any discussion? I have a question. I was looking at the actually this comes in with your next request that I had a question. The full-time dispatcher here will receive the benefits and so on. And the part-time individuals do not receive benefits, is that correct?
Well, they do accumulate sick time, but otherwise they don't get any benefits.
And they're all at the same step and level. So these are all new people to us?
Yes.
All right. Any questions, any additional questions? We have the motion, we'll take the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the next item before you is to approve the status change for Correctional Officer Richard Rodstad. This is from part-time to full-time, and it'll be effective tomorrow, June 2nd. And his pay will remain the same.
Okay, this, I'm gonna ask a question now. OB 22, step 1, was the same as for the first 3 that we just voted on, but the hourly wage is $2 different. I was wondering, why
For-
would level OB 22 step 1 be $1 figure, and then for this one, it's a different dollar figure? This- The part-time, the first 3 that we voted on are $20.53, but it's the same OB 22 step 1. And then now for this individual.
I think his step number is wrong, because he's been here as a part-timer.
I wondered,
Yeah, I think that's a typo.
okay,
I don't know the steps off the top of my head, but he's been here, so he'd be up on the pay scale.
okay. Yeah, I thought, oh, there's something maybe not right there, okay. And now this individual will be receiving benefits and so on, because
Yes.
transitioning into full-time.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to change Officer Rosted from part-time to full-time effective June 2nd.
Okay, do I hear a second?
I'll second that motion.
All right, any further discussion or questions about the position? Hearing none, we will take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
All right, and I'll just give you a quick update on where we're at with employment openings. So we still have 2 full-time openings in the jail. We just had that open and we only got 1 applicant. And we moved her to the background, we'll have to open that one. Dispatch is fully staffed and we're still short 1 deputy. And we'll reopen that soon. We're not gonna reopen it right now because it's the same people that we just had apply for the last one. We're gonna give it a little bit of time
Okay,
and then reopen it, because we do have a part-timer who's picking up several hours and helping us in that respect, so. Still a couple of openings, but we're in there, so.
So are you still doing some patrol yourself?
Yeah, I actually was out on Saturday night, so.
You don't arrest anybody?
I, actually,
Kidding.
that's
You don't
two weeks ago I did, I arrested a drunk. Yep,
You did what?
I arrested a drunk driver.
Oh, you
So,
did? Oh, goodness.
I'm out there working.
Are the detectives still patrolling too?
Yeah, well, we haven't pushed them out on a regular schedule like we thought we were going to, just because how busy they are, it hasn't really worked. But they've been picking up shifts and covering things there.
So I know I touched on this before, but we're not getting anybody from the metro area, and I suppose that's about money. probably,
Yeah, it is.
Because you make your pay,
Yeah, a lot of those metro agencies are, well, starting out, they're $10 an hour higher. And then on the top end, you're like $20 an hour higher, so you're talking
if
20
you
to
could ever
40,000,
convince them, it's cheaper to live down here.
right?
yeah.
It's a lifestyle change.
It's a big hit,
so.
yep. So,
All right, well, I'm glad you filled 1.
we're getting there, slowly but surely. So the last item I have before you is to approve the REAM grant, which is the Remote Electronic Alcohol Monitoring Grant. This is the grant that county probation used to have when we had county probation. When we switched to the DOC format, they can no longer get that grant, so we are basically taking this grant over for them and continuing the grant. The grant is already in process. And just a quick description of the program. So this program is for those people who are put on electronic monitoring and can't afford it. So they have to come up with funds originally to get on the program. But if they can't afford to continue the program, this grant money can be used for that. So it's not money that the county necessarily sees, it's money that we basically pass through to other people, and then we pay for the electronic home monitoring that way, so.
So this is the one where they can randomly call you and you got so many seconds to blow.
Right.
So if they can't afford it, they're allowed to go on it anyways versus jail?
Well, yeah, so they need to initially upfront get on this program themselves. So there has to be some buy-in by them. They have to be able to afford it. But as they continue with the program, this can help them out to continue it if they're having financial difficulties. And yeah, that keeps them out of the jail.
So after they initially get it hooked up, there's a monthly charge or something?
Yep.
And that's an outside company that does that, right? We don't.
Right. Yep.
Okay. Would make a motion to pass the remote electronic monitoring program grant agreement to accept it.
Madam Chair, I'll second that motion.
Right, we have a motion, and the motion, if I read it, to approve the amendment to the REAM grant. Very good. Any further discussion for Brian on this? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Good morning, Paul Bukovich, Meeker County Social Services.
Paul.
I only have one order of business before you this morning, and that's our social services accounts payable. Commissioner Johnson, to answer your question, sorry, I didn't get back your email. That is funded through the Caddy waiver, which is a combination of state and federal funds, predominantly federal funds. That actual service was used to clean.
Well, I could see if you had an elderly person and you were
Yes.
with
and-
no family and stuff.
Yeah, and so how it works is there's a number of local vendors that do services for us. As an example, this moving, cleaning a home, or building a ramp, or some other modifications. In hopes of using local vendors and not having to have them go through the full state contracting process, we are able to be the payor as well as the service provider. So we can bill the waiver and then just pass through those funds to that billing, or to that entity that does the work. And so that's what occurred here.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
I knew I got it to you late, but I thought,
Well, I think late is arbitrary.
Was that a question about the housing services, unique movers, was?
unique movers, I was just curious.
Yeah.
Had a kind of a hunch, but it was, your definition was different. It was the cleaning part. I thought they would just be physically moving items, but. they also
Yes,
clean.
yeah. We don't, for part of that funding mechanism, they can do some moving, but it's very prescriptive when we can and we cannot use movers.
And we had 2 funerals,
Yes.
one Johnson Hoagland, one Hanke. Do you go by where they reside, or do you just rotate them?
We just go wherever the body is, right? We don't really have a system in which we choose funeral homes. We do have a contract rate, though, for all of our funeral homes, and that's per our policy. So that is what we pay. We don't pay any more.
We had the same questions on my notes too. Is that a $3,000 flat fee that the county pays to have an
Correct.
individual? And of course, that has been arranged with, I don't know, are there other funeral homes within Meeker County, or is it just Johnson, Hagelin, and Hunky?
Johnson Hagelin is our largest funeral home, I believe. And so we did have conversations with them when we set our rate. Our rate, up until a couple of years ago, was hadn't been looked at in about 10 to 12 years. And so we were really low on what we were paying. And so we kind of got an idea of what they were using and what it cost them, and we increased our rate to where it's at. It's a bare minimum. Our funeral homes are basically providing some charity work when they do a service for the rate that we offer. Regionally, we are lower than other counties in our rate, but we are not the lowest, so we're kind of on a low average of what we pay. We have really good service from the funeral homes. They do a very good job within that rate. So we're very pleased with how this has turned out. I hope they share that same view of this, but they're not making any money off of us.
No.
And to be callous, it is a sanitation requirement. And that's why we are providing for funerals for folks that don't have funds. One of the areas that you have questioned me on previously is some of our estate recoveries. That is part of our estate recovery. So what we do is we pay out, but there are some times where the person might have a home or some other assets within their estate that covers the paying us back first, and then any medical assistance or state paid health care second, which we do receive a percentage of those collections as well.
I recall some of this conversation previous. I hear that there are other places like Minnesota Cremation Association, if that has been looked into as a resource.
Sure.
Or if the prices are comparable, I don't know.
We're actually cheaper. Yeah.
Going with our local
Yes,
Meeker
yeah,
County.
yeah, we did a pretty deep dive on this a couple of years ago.
Okay,
And the Cremation Society is a choice that folks have, but we still, per policy, only expend a set amount of dollars. And I don't recall off the top of my head what our dollars is, right around 32, I think.
I don't believe that, I don't care. I think this is a service we need to deliver. We've had this discussion for a long time, but I don't believe that. You'd have to convince me that the Cremation Society isn't cheaper.
I can dust off the data. It may have
I'm gonna tell you,
changed.
I had a friend who had it arranged for like $1,200. Pretty basic stuff.
That the Cremation Society, the prices that you're looking at don't include internment or a plot. And the
Well,
prices
they
that,
cremate you, I mean,
yeah.
the mantle works for me. It's not,
A lot of our folks that are accessing
no, I'm not.
county-based
I
burials
just-
don't have
but
a mantle to be placed upon.
Cremation is, the Cremation Society is one of, I think, the cheapest ways to, I'm not,
And our funeral homes do cremations,
right,
and it is cheaper.
get to choose what they want, correct?
so we
the-
have to provide a place for that urn then afterwards too? We have to provide a plot?
Yes,
Really?
yes,
Oh.
and in our rate with our funeral homes covers that, even if they choose a casket funeral. I mean,
Yeah.
we're getting a good deal
Yeah,
there. I mean, I hate to say it that way,
Yeah.
but
Well, and I think in 2019, I believe, was when we addressed this rate as a board. We went through, Paul presented on
yeah.
some of our options and details, and so this is a fairly new policy for the county.
Yep, within a
That's
couple of
on
years.
Yeah, I think it was late in 19 that we,
Right.
Correct.
I don't remember what it was, but
If you've
we
buried
approved
anyone or
3,000.
had a, you know, it's, in 2010, my mother's was $15,000 and it wasn't extravagant, so that was with the bid.
I think the Cremation Society of America is, my niece or my nephew and his wife did it. They're young.
Yeah.
So because they get to bank that money for presumably a long time.
Right.
You know, they probably get a better rate.
And all of our programs do allow for a disallow for funeral expenses. So we have individuals that we serve and they get Social Security and they may have a spend down or they may be working somewhat. Putting money in an irrevocable burial trust is considered disallowable assets, as well as it is a way of moving some of their income into an area that they can provide for their last remains. So we do counsel a lot of the folks that we serve on doing that as well.
This is just for information. Social Security still only pay $250.
For a funeral?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I didn't know they paid anything.
I didn't think they paid anything. Right.
You'll get a death benefit from Social Security. I did when my parents,
Oh, okay.
I think it was $250.
Well, so here's
Yeah.
a piece of good news I heard on the news this morning. FEMA has now created a website that you can go on, and if you have a loved one or someone that died of COVID and you can prove it on a death certificate, the government will give you $35,000 So I don't know if you wanna have Barb start searching on there.
Oh
35.
goodness, oh goodness,
If it doesn't say that on your death certificate, I understand they'll walk you through ways to make it look that way.
huh. Well,
nearly
I'm sure
everybody
Barb has probably
Yeah, I know.
heard of this, so.
Our numbers are really gonna climb now.
I don't know what the point is at this point, but I bet there is one, so just
Well, we'll definitely,
let Barb know, cause she'll go after it like.
sure she will, yeah. Yeah, so it is just part of what we do. You know, as you may hear me say, we are available from birth to death for folks in our
Cradle
community.
to grave.
I make a motion to approve the social services accounts payable.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional questions? I had another question. There was one expense for something called MAPS. Now, is MAPS an acronym, or are we purchasing?
Wow. How exciting that you asked that
Oh, dear.
question. I'll try to be brief. That's Meeker Area's Partners in Prevention. It used to be Litchfield area, no, I don't know. I don't even remember what it was called. Rural Partners. This is a program that's kind of headed up by our probation and our Angie Mouse from our victims advocacy is kind of the chairperson. We get together with a lot of the folks that are working with our children, and the intent is to create a prevention and an abstinence message for chemicals and tobacco and those sorts of things. We have public health also participating in this initiative. And so you may see coming up that we're going to be doing our second annual scavenger hunt. And the scavenger hunt, we receive a number of donations from area businesses, which, you know, if kiddos are doing stuff with mom and dad, such as going to a park or playing ball, they can check those off and then they can send those in and retrieve some of those prizes that we have available. Now, I don't have a picture of it, but there is a project that's going around with different organizations throughout Meeker County, where I believe it was First District, if I'm not mistaken, that donated the cows.
Yeah, it's their 100th, it's an anniversary, so this is our decorating. Cows and calves.
June is dairy month, so.
Yeah.
and for their 100th anniversary or something, they purchased all these cows and different entities around are painting them.
Yeah, so
So
we are
that was-
participating in that as well. A number of our students have painted up one of our cows, and I think it looks pretty groovy. It's kind of got that love and peace on it, and it's really well done. So I'm excited to see how that turns out and looks. But we're working with, community partners to really get that message out there that there's other things to do other than drinking and using drugs and smoking and those sorts of things. And so it's kind of a fun project for all of us.
Of course, I'm just
Yeah,
letting it
so-
fall, and I looked at
So to
maps.
answer your question in a short way, we're the fiscal host for it. We did receive a grant. If there's any other grants, we're going to do the accounting of those. And so we just have some money that we have set aside for maps, and we've created a line item specifically for that.
And my last question, I know there's a lot of credit card for gas. Do we go to one specific vendor for credit card for gas, or do we take bids on that and have
No, we just go where folks are at.
wherever?
Yep.
Alrighty. Any additional questions for Paul on this issue? On the motion?
I did, but I couldn't find it in the billing, so I'll give you a pass.
Oh.
But,
Okay.
I've never heard a cow described as groovy before. I do have.
Yeah.
If you saw this, you would understand.
I second that.
Well, you have to see how these kiddos painted this one, just so you know.
I liked your scripted term, that was good. Any other questions for Paul? All right, all those in favor of approving accounts payable, say aye.
Right.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for your time this
Thank you,
morning.
Paul.
Thanks.
Yep. All right, we have Barb.
Being it's 9 o'clock, we'll connect with Gail. Gail's going to join us virtually. And so you'll recess and see Gail.
Okay, I would like to recess the county board at this time. And we will reconvene as the county ditch authority. And we have a guest coming on the Zoom, right? Something like that? Okay. All right, let's go over here.
I believe Gail can hear us.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
Can you
perfect,
hear
Gail. So as an introduction, we are here, both John and I, to bring before you a request for redetermination of benefits on County Ditch 17 and 19. A little background, we did have an informational meeting with the landowners on both 17 and 19 on May 17th. Many of you were there. This meeting confirmed for the Ditch Authority that since the original benefits and damages were set in 1904, land values, land use, and drainage practices have changed. The Drainage Authority finds the required conditions, which Gail is going to go through, may exist to initiate a redetermination of benefits. The original benefits and damages do not reflect a reasonable present-day land values, and the benefited acres have changed. We do have a team of drainage viewers, of which one was part of the presentation at the informational meeting, that we are going to recommend for appointment upon Gail going through the different details. So Gail, you have the floor.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So in the board packet, there are two draft findings. They are identical, except that one is for County Ditch 17 and the other is for County Ditch 19. And you can see that in the caption at the top of each. They're called findings in order, initiating the redetermination of benefits and damages and appointing viewers. And as Barb pointed out, for the board to have jurisdiction over the properties that are already on the benefits list and those that are not but might become part of the benefits list after this process, the board has to make some very specific findings that are documented in the record, and that's what these findings aim to do. So I'll go through them with the board and then ask if you have any questions. But each of the findings points out that the county commissioners are the drainage authority for County Ditch 17 and County Ditch 19. These systems were established in 1904, and at that time, benefits would have been determined based on what the viewers and drainage authority knew in 1904 about farming practices and the use of the system at that time. In paragraph 3, we state that the current benefits rules reflected the benefited properties, areas, and benefited values that were determined based on some assumptions regarding what the future use of drainage of these properties might be. But since that original establishment in 1904 and the original determination of benefits and damages, land uses have changed, drainage practices have changed. There's been more acceleration and increased runoff of land to those drainage systems that change the nature and value of benefits accruing to each land from the construction of that system. In paragraph 5, we just state that since the original determination of benefits and damages, we know that land values have changed within the benefited area of County Ditch 17 and 19. I included in here what Barb pointed out, that we held an informational meeting for each of these systems on May 17th at 5 o'clock at the Litchfield Civic Arena, and that meeting was attended by landowners who confirmed the determinations of this board that since that original determination of benefits, land values have changed and the benefits of record today do not reflect reasonable present day land values, and that land use and drainage practices have changed and that the benefited areas have changed. Then I just move into some citation of the drainage code, stating that the board finds the conditions required to initiate a redetermination of benefits exist, and that's that the original benefits and damages do not reflect reasonable present-day land values, and the benefit areas have changed. So that's the finding that gives the board jurisdiction over this process. There was some discussion at that informational meeting from landowners who expressed that they wanted to keep the drainage authority staff moving towards a repair of these systems and do those concurrently if we could, rather than wait for the redetermination of benefits process to be complete and then start working on the repair. What I expressed at that meeting was that we could adopt some findings today that made clear that the board's intent was any costs incurred to prepare us for ordering a major repair would be assessed based on the new benefits roll that comes out of this process, but that we would actually not order the final repair until this process was done. So the way I pitched it to landowners and the board members at that meeting was staff, John, Barb, and I could position ourselves to move right into a repair when this process is done, and those preliminary costs be assessed on the new benefits roll. And so that's what I've set up here with these last few findings. I've pointed out that in statute section 103E 725, all fees and costs that are incurred for proceedings relating to repairing a drainage system, including but not limited to inspections, engineering, viewing, publications, are all costs of repair that the drainage code requires to be assessed against the properties and entities benefited. And in paragraph 9, I just point out that the board finds that the redetermination of benefits and damages being initiated by these findings will create a more equitable list of property and entities currently benefited by future administration, inspection, and repair of County Ditch 17. And then in the final finding, just pointing out that we find it's equitable and reasonable for all of these costs to be apportioned pro rata on all property and entities determined to be benefited at the conclusion of the redetermination of benefits and damages proceedings. So we will do that based on the new benefits roll, not on the current benefits roll that exists today. Then when we get down to the order in paragraph 8 just says that the board is going to follow statutes section 103E 351 to conduct a redetermination of benefits and damages. Staff is recommending you appoint Ron Rehnquist, Joe Jacobs, and Jeff Johnson as viewers, with Dave Schmidt and Alan Kerber appointed as alternate viewers in case any of the viewers become unavailable during the proceeding. By statute, within 5 days of this order being adopted, your county auditor will execute an order that I'll provide for her, designating a time and a location for the first meeting of the viewers and the alternative viewers. Send them a copy of the auditor's order along with a certified copy of this order. And at that meeting, she'll administer the oath and that'll officially vest viewers with their authority to proceed. And then finally in paragraph D, just to note that all costs incurred on behalf of the Drainage Authority for administration, inspection, and repair of this system, and the costs of conducting these redetermination of benefits proceedings will be apportioned pro rata on all property determined to be benefited at the conclusion of these proceedings. So that's the final paragraph that says we will wait and apply those repair costs when this process is done. And with that, Madam Chair, now would be a good time for the board to ask me any questions they have on those. Otherwise, we're looking for a motion and a second, and then a roll call vote to approve these draft findings. And there will be two separate motions, one for County Ditch 17 and one for County Ditch 19.
Kale, this is Johnson. After our meeting that day and on my way home, I thought, because they talked about wanting to start work right away, but I didn't feel comfortable with that because it's like there may be people who don't even know they're gonna be responsible for paying any part of this. So we really wouldn't probably wanna start doing work on it, other than gathering permits and so forth, until after the redetermination.
And Madam Chair and Commissioner Johnson, that's how I've set this up. In any repair proceeding, there are some procedural things like permitting work, preparing the work that needs to be done, inspection reports that happen behind the scenes and are never a process that involves a lot of landowner interaction. The landowner interaction comes at a hearing that's held before the repair order is adopted and approved. And so I have this set up to say, we'll do that behind the scenes work, so that soon after this final redetermination order is adopted, we're ready to go with that repair hearing. And that way we can have these two as close together as possible without jumping the gun and avoiding landowners who are coming in for the first time not being able to be heard and be part of the repair hearing process.
Thank you, Kale. Just wanted to make absolutely sure that that's what it was, so thank you for explaining that.
Kale, Commissioner Schmidt here too, and I appreciate Paul's question because, that, I just wanted to make sure I heard that right too, as I was listening through your findings there. Cause I thought the board, we pretty much touched on, we wanted to get the redetermination done, make sure everybody was notified, adequately, before we moved any dirt.
I have a question. You mentioned there are a number of individuals. We met Ron Ringquist at the meeting that night. I'm not familiar with who is Joe Jacobs, Jeff Johnson, Dave Schmidt, or Alan Kerber. Who are these individuals? Do they have expertise in this training? Hopefully they would have no connection to property ownership or relation to owners. I mean, are those things looked at?
Yes, the statute says that this board can set whatever criteria it wants. The only thing the Drainage Code requires is that these be disinterested qualified individuals. So I'm familiar with all 5 of these individuals. Ron has verified that they don't have property interests, that they're disinterested. And then all 5 of these individuals are members of the Minnesota Viewers Association, which requires them to go to either 1 or 2 trainings every year, similar to like a continuing education type process. So they will have gone through their initial training, and then they're required to go to 1 or 2 every year to keep up on that and to hear from engineers, drainage attorneys, seasoned viewers, one of which Ron is definitely across the state. And these 5 individuals have been doing this for quite some time. I've actually been in some appeals with a couple of them that, you know, hopefully we don't end up there, but they've been very good through that process. So I would vouch for them. Ron has made sure they're disinterested and they have been through that association accreditation process.
And Barb, I'm assuming you're fine with these.
Yes. I did ask Ron to give me a team and he wanted to have additional, normally we have 3 viewers and 1 alternate. And he had asked for 2. One of these alternates is also to be able to step in Ron's position, which is a lead.
Are costs for things like this set by the state, or how are costs determined? Hourly wages or size of project?
The viewers' proposed costs, there's no set rate by the state or by statute. At the informational meeting, Ron said that he believed the cost would end up being $2.50 on the low end to $3.50 on the high end per acre. But their contract, Barbie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe their contract is hourly. And so that's a quote estimate based on how many hours they believe it'll take.
Correct. He indicated that would be their rate, but he does bill hourly. And then they do bill mileage as they're traveling around and traveling to the job site.
And these are comparable rates, you know, who gets to determine those things?
We've used them before. There are other outfits that are, you know, wishing to do. There's some competition out there. We've
Okay.
used Ron before, and the reason that I'm bringing Ron as a recommendation, and I think Kale was okay with my recommendation, is that Ron had done work right here in the city of Litchfield for an earlier project on these two systems and had looked at the systems. So he's very familiar. Yes, he's disinterested, but he's familiar. And we're hoping that that familiarity is going to bring him into this process quicker, rather than bringing an entirely new team in that hadn't worked right here in this area within the last about year. So that was why both John and I went with that particular recommendation when he came out for the informational meeting, because of his knowledge.
So is this a resolution or a motion?
Resolution.
Right, and as Gail indicated, you'll do the findings in fact and the determination of benefits individually for each one. And it is in the form of a resolution, so we do require a roll call on these. So both 17 and 19 need to be separate.
So we will take a motion for redetermination of benefits on ditch number 17. Shall we do that first?
Sure.
I would entertain a motion for that resolution.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to, initiate redetermination of benefits on, County Ditch 17.
Do I hear a second?
Madam Chair, I will second.
Okay. Any additional questions, comments, discussion about redetermination of county ditch number 17?
Is there ever any situation where boards actually vote against redetermination? I mean, it's hard to argue with the logic other than the costs.
I guess by the time we've brought them here, we vetted that out. There are people that ask a lot of questions about redetermination, and we talked through many of the different steps and then the cost involved. So I don't think we bring them here if that isn't like something. We have done an informational meeting on one that we never went forward with either. We worked it out where we did a repair and did not do a redetermination. So yes, the answer would be it goes both ways.
But the key is to have the informational meeting so people are aware of it, and then that way they can speak their time.
Frankie Noonan has been really pushing for us to bring landowners in and give them information ahead of surprising them with a project. Even when we have a larger project, we bring them in and show them what's going to happen or what they could likely expect.
It was interesting, 1904, that's a long time ago. Is this,
It's
like,
not the only one, there's several. There's more.
you know, how many ditches are there?
I think there's 42 or 43 total
Okay.
between tile systems and drainage, open ditch. And there's multiples that are in this situation, I would say.
And that are that old.
Right.
That are that old, yep.
We have 1904 is a good group, and 1983 were a few redeterminations. And I think John will present going forward maybe a likely plan or a future plan. Many counties around us started slow. People realize that it's important to get the right people involved in paying as costs are incurred and who's paying them. And then they've sort of set up a plan that's a domino effect and going across their counties. So we're doing that a lot on the borders right now, as many of you have been a part of, and I believe it's going to domino effect here in the county as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of county ditches in need of it, I would say. Some of them where benefits amount are like $1,000 or $1,500 in benefits, and that's it, and it's because of setback in 1900.
Of course. I realize things have changed. I'm curious, who initiates the need for a clean out? Is that done by the county?
Some of it's, me doing an inspection, just seeing, what the conditions are, taking, whether it's a probe or something, just testing to see, how much sediment's in there. Some of it's, there's a lot of down tree debris in the bottom of the ditch that's just accumulating even worse. And so, and there's some of it that's really obvious to see. I was out in the last week and there is a 4-foot culvert that's underwater and there's only 8 feet, or there's only 8 inches of water flowing downstream of it. So it's like there's probably 3 feet of sediment sitting there just, that needs to be cleaned out.
Blocking the way.
Many times the landowners come in with a
That's
concern.
another
Yeah.
one, yep.
So if the county does go out and do some inspection, but
Yep.
the property
Landowners
owners,
Do bring it up too, yep.
You're required to inspect every 5 years.
5 years.
Yeah.
every 5 years. Any additional discussion or questions on ditch 17? I will ask Corey to take the roll call, and I am going to abstain from this vote for personal reasons.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Schiefelbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Oberg.
Yes.
Motion carries. Kale, do you need to address ditch number 19? Anything in addition at this point?
Thank you, Chair. I do not. The explanation is identical.
Okay, they are, everything is identical. Any questions? Should we call for a resolution, a motion? To move ditch number 19 forward?
Madam Chair, I'll, move to approve the findings in order initiating redetermination of benefits and damages, appointed viewers to County Ditch 19.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Any additional questions? All right. Corey, if you would take the roll, and I will be able to be a part of this one.
Commissioner Oberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Schiefelbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Schmidt,
Yes.
Commissioner Bredesen.
Yes. Motion carries. All right.
Okay, then we will keep Kale on the line because,
Alexa is on.
well, it's different.
Okay.
Ready? Okay, we'll keep Kale on the line because we have another item which we want his guidance, and that is the petition for removal of property from County Ditch 35. So, John and I received a petition from Bert Herzog. And it was presented for the removal of his property from County Ditch 35. His property is in the northeast of the southeast quarter and the south 1/2 of the southeast quarter of the northeast in Darwin Township. This property has an original benefit of $8,127.30, is 3.76% of the entire system. His acreage on the entire parcels that I just outlined is 54.15. The petition indicates the property does not benefit from the county system. Any old drainage tile has not worked for many years, and the overland water does not drain in the direction of 35. The ditch authority will need to determine if the property no longer has benefit on the drainage system as alleged in the petition. An appointment of viewers would be appropriate to provide the board with objective evidence to this benefit, and Kale will outline that particular process for us.
Thank you, Barb, and Chair, members of the board. So we're operating under 103E.805. And it allows any landowner who's assessed on a drainage system to bring a petition like this to the board for the board's review, asking that their property be removed from the benefits roll. The effect of that then being, if this petition is approved, this property will no longer be assessed any costs for repairs or inspection or administration of the system. And likewise, no improvements then can be made to this property to use County Ditch 35 as an outlet unless the landowner petitioned back in for the right to make those drainage improvements. The statute contemplates that when a petition is filed, that you would set a hearing date and you would give notice by mail to all landowners on the system. And you'd also give notice by publication in a newspaper or posting on your county website for at least 3 weeks before the hearing date. And so the drainage code would say we should set a hearing date that's at least 3 weeks out and then notice that hearing. At the hearing, it's the petitioner's burden to prove to you that 3 things are met in order for this petition to be granted. Number 1 is that waters from the petitioner's property have either been diverted from County Ditch 35 or that the property cannot significantly or regularly use County Ditch 35 as an outlet. Number 2, that the property is not benefited by the drainage system. And number 3, that removing property from the drainage system will not prejudice any other property owners and property remaining in the system. So in the petition, these petitioners have alleged that their property does not benefit by County Ditch 35. They allege that any old drainage tile has not worked for the past 20 years, that the overland water does not drain in the direction of County Ditch 35. They claim that 18 acres were enrolled in a 10-year CRP program in 2020, and that this property does not border County Ditch 35 because it is a half mile away from County Ditch 35. I'm not familiar with this property. Maybe some commissioners are. One of my concerns and one of the challenges of this type of petition is, having evidence at that public hearing verifying that this property truly does not benefit. Generally, viewers who determine benefits will say that enrollment in a CRP program is not evidence that something does not benefit because of 2 reasons. Number 1, it's often that in order for that land to be eligible for CRP, it had to be cropped or have some cropping history, and sometimes that cropping history was not possible without the drainage system as an outlet. And those CRP programs are also temporary. They're not permanent perpetual easement programs. It may or may not be true that the overland water does not flow towards Ditch 35. And it may or may not be true that there's old drainage tile that doesn't work and couldn't be repaired to use County Ditch 35. So the board has some options. The board could decide, you know what, we will set the hearing date and we'll let the petitioners meet their burden and prove to us that this land doesn't benefit. Or if the board would like some objective information available to it at that hearing, you could send a staff person out to investigate, or you could appoint a viewer to go out and to inspect this property and write up a short report for you about whether or not the property benefits from the drainage system. So that's something the board should discuss and decide before deciding whether or not to set a hearing date.
Have you inspected that ditch? Have you been out there?
I have been out there. I looked at some of, using Beacon, I've used some of the contours too. Yeah, he's half mile from the ditch, there is a low swale that's from his property going down to the ditch. Using its 2-foot contours, it looks like it's pretty flat. So I mean, I could see where, on a normal rain event, nothing is probably just gonna be absorbed in his property, not gonna run towards the ditch. Maybe in a major event it might, but surrounding his property, I mean, in a big rain event, that's the only way it's gonna go. If he was to tile it, that would be his outlet, just because that's the lowest point. There is an old county tile that runs not too far from his property that eventually ends up in the ditch. And I don't doubt that
That's what he's saying doesn't work.
yeah, and I don't doubt that it doesn't work.
So John, this is the area we're talking about.
Yes, yep. And his property is located about where the R is on Darwin.
Okay, so right up here in this corner.
Yep, right up in there.
Has redetermination been, ever occurred on 35?
In 93. So it wasn't.
It's an older one, but not among our oldest.
And so if they do more work on 35 for some reason, and they have redetermination, are you entering into a whole nother can of worms if you agreed to this petition, or is this basically just redetermining this particular property? So what's gonna happen?
It would
You know-
just be this property.
So he's asking to be removed.
He's asking
Yeah.
to be
From the
removed.
system
Right.
because he doesn't benefit anything.
I know, but if you,
That doesn't,
Kale, can you weigh in on if
Well-
this was redetermined, or because this was redetermined in the nineties, how that benefit might have been looked at, different than 1904?
Yeah, without looking at the record, not clear what the viewer's thought process was when they viewed this property. It's likely, like John said, that if this property were to be improved, that would be their outlet, and the viewers don't make a determination of benefits based on what the current use is. They do it based on what the highest and best possible use is. So if you personally elect not to improve your property and drain artificially into County Ditch 35, that doesn't really weigh in on the viewer's determination of benefits. If this were to come up for benefits again, and this petition were to have been denied or granted, the viewers would see that in their record review and would take that into consideration. But they would present a report to you based on their objective opinion, regardless of how you acted on this petition. And let's say you granted this petition and the viewers disagreed, then at that redetermination of benefits hearing in the future, this landowner would be noticed that it's proposed to have them be benefited again, and the board would have the authority to approve the viewer's report as presented or amend the viewer's report and keep them removed from the benefits list.
Cale, if I may ask, there will be a cost to this, of course, there's 54 acres there. So who gets the cost on that? Is it these folks with the petition, if we appoint a viewer?
That is up to the board. There's some discretion there for the board to say, this is a system cost, it's part of protecting the benefits on the whole system. But I have seen some drainage authorities that say, it's not a benefit to the system for the petitioners to get their property removed. So they will, make the final order conditional on the petitioners paying the proceeding expense.
how do we normally do it, or haven't we? What's our normal procedure with pays, cause I feel like we usually pay.
We've done it both ways. When we had a request for removal and it was denied by the board, the entire cost was borne by those that brought that petition.
If
It was
it's
just a
denied.
short time ago.
Yeah.
To actually have granted one removal, it's been too long since we've done one.
Yeah.
I
I think 2000 was
It was quite a
last
while.
one I seen in any records.
So if the outcome is that they haven't benefited for all these years, I would assume the ditch authority would pay.
It's possible. I guess another viewpoint would be, and maybe Gil can weigh in, if we were to appoint a viewer, it would bring a specialized person in to give us a non-biased opinion. Because one might say, John can be qualified in working for the county, but maybe we need to appoint a viewer just to bring an independent look at it and be fair to all the landowners on that particular
That would be,
system.
that would be our cost, if we appointed it.
I think the cost could go both ways, right, Kale? If we chose to bring the viewer in to be independent?
Yeah, it could, and I'd say it's about 50-50 with my drainage authority clients, which I know is not helpful to you. But about half the board say, this is about protecting other landowners to make sure they aren't shortchanged. And so it's a system protection cost. And about other half of my clients say, this is about these landowners believing they don't benefit and wanting to get their assessments corrected. That's a personal benefit and we charge them for it. So the drainage code allows either road.
So if we decide that we should have an independent viewer, we don't have to determine who pays for it right now when we do.
Were you able to hear Beth's question? Would we determine now who would pay for it? Because at this point, this landowner has 3.76% of the entire benefits on that system. And this system was done in the early 1990s, so it's a newer set of benefits. Do we need to determine now who pays the viewer, or could we make that determination upon the viewer's presentation?
You could make that determination now or at the viewer's presentation. Personally, if we're gonna charge the petitioners, I like to say it's nice to give them a heads up. So it would be nice to send them a follow-up letter today saying, we've appointed a viewer. When that report comes back, we will share a copy with you and set a hearing date. And the board will either we let them know, we'll determine at the hearing how those costs are charged, or let them know upfront, that these will be a petitioner's expense. I always
How
err
much
on
money,
recommending some upfront notice if the board might charge for those costs.
do we have an idea of what the cost will be? Doesn't seem like it should be that much.
In your experience, Kale, what does it cost for a viewer to do this type of job? Would we be looking at under $5,000 total between legal and proceedings, notices, and the viewer?
Yeah, 5,000 would seem like a high estimate because it's one hearing, it's viewing one property. I would be surprised to see the cost exceed that.
I have a question here. This a little bit seems to me like me saying my kids don't go to school anymore. They're graduated, so I don't want to pay this school portion of my taxes. That 3.76%, I'm assuming, his ditch assessment is minimal. These property owners. So I have everybody's water goes somewhere. I mean, I own property and I'm part of Sauk River watershed or Crow River watershed. I mean, that's just the way it is. To remove somebody from, I find this a kind of a odd situation that we'd physically remove a property from a drainage system, because your water is gonna go somewhere sooner or later, and in this case, just because you're not on county ditch, physically on county ditch 35 or any county ditch, your water still ends up in a lake somewhere, and it has a drainage system to get there. So I find it, I just think this is an odd request, and once you start removing, now we're kind of picking and choosing who's gonna participate in a drainage system and who isn't.
Well, if we determine by benefit, and this guy says he isn't benefiting, I think he has a perfect right to, we can tell him no, obviously, but I think we have an obligation to.
Oh, he has and I agree with the right to petition and ask. I just find it
I think,
rather odd
I don't-
myself.
what do you think? It's not the first time it's ever happened, obviously.
And I think most of the ones that I've seen where they have petitioned to be removed, they're on a tail end of a lateral or, out on the outer part. They're not, sort of, if you will, in the middle of the system.
And
Is
that's
that correct, Gil?
Yeah, that's correct.
and that's where I was going with it. The other ones where we've abandoned the county ditch, they've also had, part of their program was to create a maintenance system for their drainage with the neighboring property owners who want to be removed from that system. It's usually 3 or 4 on a top end of a ditch where they don't want to be the county ditch, they want to privatize the ditch system. That's where the removal piece is in the middle of a system that
Well, and just
I'm gonna have to have more concrete evidence that this is the right way to go before I
doing
can.
a little simple math. I used $200,000 that we talked about the other night to repair a system. At 3.7%, their grand total is $7,400. It might cost them $5,000, I said, for having the viewers and getting an opinion and getting that, and is that a system that would ever require $200,000 worth of repair?
Not unless you start replacing a bunch of tile, but
So,
the open system doesn't come even close to that.
I was curious, is this ditch currently up for cleanup?
Contractor's actually starting today to do a cleanout, so.
So
That's
I'm
where I'm going
wondering
right after this meeting.
if this individual does not want to be a part of this upcoming expense.
Well, I don't think we can assume that.
I think he's asking for a fair review,
I think it's
and
a
I,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah,
think, you know,
yeah,
I think how
that-
many of them say they don't benefit, they're not part of the system. He's taking it to the step that he wants it reviewed, because he has strong feelings
Yep.
to what he's stating, and I respect that. I think at this point, if we wanna be independent and not rely on either John or Phil to, you know, work on behalf of the county, that we should bring an independent in. And even as I was thinking about this, because this is in Darwin and because we have the viewers on 17 and 19 circling the northwest and south part of Litchfield, they're right here. I would recommend that we draw on one of their expertise in this area, because they're here. I don't know how long it'll take them, but they give you an unbiased opinion, I think.
So if we make a recommendation to have an outside viewer take a look at it, then can we send them a letter and let them know that that's what we're doing and there's a possibility that they may have to pay for it, or do we have to determine that now, or do you think we should just pay for it?
That's the one thing where I think Steve made a good point, that if you start saying, okay, my kids don't go there anymore, I think they who petition should have to pay for it. Otherwise, you open a can of worms that everybody will say, well, the rest of the ditch people will pay for it, you know, and it will be just minimum.
My only thing is if they come in and say he's absolutely right, then I don't think we should have to pay for it, because he's been paying for something he hasn't benefited from.
But that's what the redetermination determined before.
You see what I'm
So.
saying?
I understand, but we already redetermined this in 1990s, so I'm assuming it's not 1904 anymore kind of situation. So if you go this route, I'm just saying, I think you're gonna keep opening cans of worms up that say, okay, hey, so-and-so got that done. I'm gonna petition too. What's it gonna cost me? 3.76% if we, you know,
So
whatever
we're
it
gonna
determines.
Be able to let him know what it could cost him then,
Or
that's the way they decide to go.
I believe so. Kel, can you outline, what it might look like if we determine, or it is determined that his property is removed versus what it might look like if he remains on the system with regard to paying?
By drainage code, you have to have that evidentiary hearing, and you will have to make a final order either granting or denying the petition. If it's granted, then as part of granting that petition, the auditor removes this property from the benefits roll, and that benefit percentage gets spread pro rata based on everybody else's existing benefit for all future assessments and costs of the system. If the petition is denied, the landowner has a right to appeal that denial, but if ultimately that denial is upheld or not appealed, then the benefits roll remains the same as it is today.
When I was listening, it's up to the property owner to prove 3 points before their property can be removed. Now, wouldn't that property owner have to have the situation evaluated by an expert and then bring that information along with his petition to the board? Why would we have to initiate the investigation if it's the property owner's responsibility to meet those 3 criteria?
Chair, that's a very good point, and certainly you can handle that a couple of different ways. We could, I think if we set a hearing date and say nothing, in my experience, it's very unlikely the petitioners will show up with any evidence. And then, might be disappointed that ultimately their petition gets denied just for not having evidence. So alternatively, we could send them a letter saying, we're setting a hearing date, please be advised, it's your burden to bring this evidence to the board. We need objective evaluated evidence showing these 3 points as part of our analysis. But also, to aid boards and not have them have to deny a petition just for landowner failure to meet their burden of proof. It's definitely not uncommon for boards to appoint a viewer in this situation just to aid it in making, the best choice.
But the one way we expel nothing up front. We have the hearing, we would have no real costs up front yet. As a first step, and
In my experience, he who petitions pays the bill.
Is the cost. Especially since I heard there were 3 pretty hefty points of criteria that must be met. And that can't be done on just, I'm the property owner and I say so. I would think they would have to encumber costs of research and have an expert come in on their own dime. And I'm curious on 2 points above and beyond that now the ditch is going to be cleaned out, so there will be an expense. I'd like to get off the rolls if I was a property owner. And it was just re-evaluated in the early 90s. So those are the points that I'm looking at.
Well, and I think it's important to note too that we've already started paying. I mean, the county's already put some effort into this. Barb has already had to look into it. I mean, we're gonna end up putting some more time into this that everybody's gonna pay for. So, I mean, I don't think we need to incur the cost of a private landowner request. I think that's.
The burden is on the landowner to
That's
bring
why-
forward evidence because of their petition. What is the next move?
So the next move would be to make a decision on whether you want to appoint a viewer or not. And I think that probably will decide whether you set a hearing date now or at a later time.
One question to piggyback off that. If the landowner wants to incurs this, incurs the cost, can they pick a viewer that we deem credible, that they can use, and then let the burden go all on them instead of us appointing a viewer? Let them find a viewer that is one of whatever the viewer community, whatever you call that, and we base the petition off that information. Sometimes I see where if we appoint a viewer per se, then the landowner's thinking, oh my goodness, well, they're just appointing their own viewer. It might be benefiting the ditch rather than myself.
that kind of goes in line with what you're saying. It's up to them for the burden of proof.
I think so. I mean, otherwise it's like, if I was on the ditch per se, I'd be like, really? I'm getting charged because they don't wanna be on the ditch, and then I'm gonna get double whammy per se, you know?
So can we send a letter, Barb, telling them, I mean, I feel like an obligated, this is my township, and I feel like this guy's right, obviously, I don't know.
Oh, sure.
So we send a letter and say, the board has decided that you must, present credible evidence. We're suggesting a viewer, a credible viewer that you will have to, let them know they will have to bear the expense of it. Perhaps you won't go through with it.
Yep, let them know.
See, I
those
think that's a
3
fair
points.
thing.
I
I'd
just
never
wanna be
deny the
clear,
petition.
And I don't assume that he
yes.
is doing this because they're cleaning it out right now. I wanna be clear about it. Maybe he really thinks he isn't benefiting, and maybe he'll
Right.
find out that he is from.
The other,
Let's ask Kale, can we outline that today, that it's the flavor of this board, that, we acknowledge this petition and make requests as, outlined on number 2, 3, and 4, that he bring credible evidence, that he present to the board at a future date?
Would that have to come before the board, before there would be a public meeting? Would this person need to come before us with those 3 points of criteria before we call for an open meeting?
I think it's, this is about communication and efficiency, right?
Right.
And so to keep things moving, and to keep them as efficient and least costly as possible, based on your discussion, what I'd recommend is you set a hearing date, that's potentially something more like 6 weeks rather than 3 weeks out. and that a letter go out from Barbara this week saying the board's acknowledged your petition. They've set this on for hearing, 6 weeks from today. It requires notice that goes out 3 weeks before that hearing date. It's your burden to prove these 3 things from the statute. And the board expects that, for a petition to be reviewed fairly, you need to bring that evidence to the board before that hearing. And we can even at the bottom say, for your information, the board has recently approved these 5 objective viewers who are specialized in making these determinations. We urge you to consider employing one of them to review this and prepare a report to file with the board.
That's the motion I was gonna make. You did it well.
What he said, yeah.
Well-
I'd like to second that motion that Barbara's gonna make.
Well, and I just wanna bring up another point that Cale made earlier too, and the other piece to this is highest and best use of the land. And that's important, cause this petition would stay with the property, with the parcel ID. So if he sells it 2 years from now and a neighboring farmer buys it and wants to take it out of CRP, put it back into crop production and use that low area to get to the drainage system, you've now created a problem that's permanent. With, and then we go back through this process, reverse osmosis,
Yeah.
to straighten it all back out. So that's the problem I have. There's conflicting ways to look at this that are polar opposites. I mean, he has a very right to petition and be heard,
I
but
remember one,
but-
there was an abandonment that came before us, I think, and then when they found out the cost, they just said, and they might have to bear the brunt of that cost. And if he legitimately believes that he doesn't benefit, he will hire a viewer and they'll either tell him, yes, you do, or no, you do not. And I think it's only fair to let him know that's the expectation.
yeah.
Yeah, cause
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure the viewer is gonna take number 4 out and say 18 acres of CRP that has no fundamental role in terms of how much this is used by ditch, because that's,
I mean, I have no idea, but I just think
Yeah.
that's being fair to, I would do that for anybody in that part of it.
And when you get into the watershed, and Cale would probably back me on that, well, I hope he would. But, my logic and my understanding being on Sauk River, I mean, everybody benefits from a watershed district to some degree.
Well, I
whether
mean, you
you're-
have people who buy, Hausman used to talk about this, they buy a hobby farm and then they get their property tax and they're paying and they're like,
Yeah,
so I get what you're saying.
yeah. So,
This gives this gentleman his day in court.
It does, and I think that's important for everybody.
I really do.
do we wanna approve this, just acknowledge the petition first and then,
I think what was cited here a little bit ago was
Okay.
excellent, unless Gail wants us to add something to that.
So we're
No,
acknowledging the petition so that this property owner can move forward based on the information he receives from Barb in this letter. We're allowing the petition to move forward. That kind of the gist of.
We're actually gonna make a motion to set a hearing date, aren't we?
I think, Gail, didn't you recite that we would acknowledge this petition and then correspond with the landowner that he needed to be aware of bringing in credible evidence verifiable by qualified viewers?
And here-
Yes, I think what I said was to be efficient, I think we should set a hearing date and that's 6 weeks or more out. And let the landowner know that hearing requires 3 weeks' notice. And that the landowner should provide the evidence on these 3 criteria prior to that 3-week notice date, so the board has at least 3 weeks to review it. And we can let the landowner know, hey, the board has just appointed these 5 disinterested people on another system who have some expertise in doing this, and you might consider using them to bring objective evidence to the board.
Right, I think that, so we set the date today.
Sure.
And Barb, do you want that letter to come for you, or would you rather have it come from him?
We'll be corresponding back and forth. Gail usually signs off on it. My suggestion that we would use Tuesday, August 2nd for the hearing date.
And this property owner, upon receiving this letter, can decide, no, I don't want to move forward, or yes, I do, but at least he would have these dates and the information.
Correct.
August 2nd is a Monday.
Would other property
Is that
owners in the
Tuesday?
system
Am I
be
the-
at this meeting also? Or
Am I,
invited?
was it 1
I got the right year here.
Need to be third.
Third one, yes.
Third.
Didn't see the.
What was your question, Paul?
Would other landowners on this system or other beneficiaries from this system be invited to this hearing?
They have to be.
Yes, they have to be noticed by mail.
Okay, and so does he have to notify us that he's going to show, or could we have a room full of beneficiaries from this and then not have them come to present anything?
Kale, isn't it our intent to have him give us an opportunity to review what he's presenting prior to the hearing? He's not gonna come to the hearing with paperwork that you haven't vetted out.
If the board would like to review it before the public hearing, that's fine. I'd say that's a little unusual, and it's a little added cost. What I'd recommend we do is, notify him that this hearing date has been set for August 3rd. We require 3 weeks' notice, so that's middle of July. And that we set maybe a week before that date or 3 days before that date to say, please provide your evidence as of this date. If you do not, we'll take that as intent of, we can even say if you do not provide anything by this date, we'll take that as intent of withdrawing your petition for lack of evidence, and we'll cancel that hearing, until we hear from you.
Good.
That would be one option if the board wanted to avoid showing up to a hearing and have this landowner not show up with anything and then ultimately get denied.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Would he be able to hire one of these folks though within the next 3 weeks? That doesn't give this property owner a lot of time to pull together his evidence. If it needs.
Oh, it's just 3 weeks to get someone hired, but I'd say that's plenty of time for a viewer to pull up the data, they need to look at the report.
Okay.
Okay, go.
So that was my motion.
Okay.
Good enough.
I'll second the motion to set a hearing date.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Do we need, Corey, I don't know if you've been able to write down all of the things. May we hear the actual motion that we will be,
Oh, boy.
yeah, I know.
I'm probably gonna re-listen to the,
Sure.
but, so you're acknowledging the petition and you're setting a public hearing for, Tuesday, August 3rd, with the stipulation that the landowner, needs to bring credible evidence, verified by an approved reviewer, and that, they need to provide that evidence 3 weeks before the hearing date. Is that it in a nutshell?
That's what you said, wasn't it?
Are we good with that?
I said whatever
Yeah.
Gail said.
That goes with my recommendation, yes,
Okay,
for the mover and second.
to meet those 3 points of criteria.
Kale, do we have to designate the time of the hearing while we're sitting the hearing, or can it be on that day?
We should designate the time in the motion.
That's the only thing I heard that was missing.
Okay, well, what time?
When are those usually?
9 o'clock so that you could be available, Kale?
I'm free all day on August 3rd.
And that's a Tuesday? Will that be during our first Tuesday of the month? So that would be a similar situation like this? Okay.
Kale, for the record, we won't need you all day on the 3rd.
9:30. Or can we set it for 9:30 then?
Sure. Whatever.
Didn't sound like he was laughing.
Now, what if the property owner is unavailable on that particular day?
That we'll have to either extend the hearing or it's likely that he may even withdraw after a lot of
That's what I
conversations
think.
that
I
I've
think
had
he's
with him.
gonna withdraw.
Because I was thinking that this is a working person.
He's been back and forth numerous different times and he's very eminent about the petition, but we'll see.
right, we have a motion, it has been seconded. Is there any additional discussion or questions? Then we'll take the vote. All those in favor of moving this forward, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, Kale.
Yes, thank you, and thank you, board.
Thanks, Gail.
All right, I would like to adjourn our county ditch authority meeting at this time and reconvene as our regular county board meeting. And next on the agenda is Greg.
I would, we will circle back, I got a bunch of things, unless you want me to give Greg up and come back. So that the renewal of
Oh, yes.
licenses is ahead of there.
There we go, yeah, we have to go back.
So I have 2 of the 3 licenses that you will be considering, in front of you today. One is the Hilltop Tavern. They, have an off sale, on sale on Sunday. And the other one is Peters of Litchfield, Peters Ribs and Catering, and they have an on sale and Sunday. If you would, please recommend those approvals.
And we can take a motion, one motion for both
Correct.
of those as you have them
Correct.
listed here.
Madam Chair, I'll move to approve a renewal on sale Sunday liquor licenses for Peters of Litchfield and off sale on sale and Sunday for Manana Hilltop Tavern.
We have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second that motion?
Okay, motion and second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And for information only, just to keep you on board as to collections and settlement, I did put together the May settlement, which cut off last Thursday. And of the percentage of county collected for 2021, we are at 56.37%. You'll see the last 4 years, that's one of the higher collections, so it's very promising there. And then move on to the payables.
I move to approve the payables.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion that has been seconded to approve county and hospital accounts payables. Any discussion or questions on any of those?
When they came from Pixie, I thought Barb must be on vacation.
Yes.
She did go north. David says either you're taking Friday or Tuesday. What's your flavor?
Should have said both. Oh, you couldn't take.
I couldn't take today. I said I can't do Tuesday. I said that would hurt.
Yeah. With a meeting.
Correct. But yes, I buzzed out late on Thursday.
Thank you for the quick response to my questions.
Yep.
Any discussion or questions about county and hospital accounts payable? We have the motion, it has been seconded. We'll take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for your time. Hopefully I don't meet Greg in the hallway as he says you went way over.
Uh-oh. Let's see, where is Greg?
He's coming up? Okay, he's coming up.
Okay.
I'm up.
Hi, Greg.
How we doing?
Hello, Greg.
Good.
Good.
Schultz, Land Use Director. You can see we got a extension for request for solar club, 1 megawatt solar farm. That's for Solar Club 32. That's for the Buer property north of Grove City. They're located about 2 miles straight north of Grove City. Actually, he's got 2 on his, for a little bit of history, he's got 2 on his property that'll be, that were approved. So I imagine there'll be another letter coming for the other one that was approved in 2020, coming up in a few months. But they're requesting to extend that CUP for 1 year to June 2nd, 2021. I don't know if you read through the reasoning why interconnection agreements with Excel are all monkeyed up apparently, so.
So, when I was reading that, the reasoning that there's a delay with Excel is, it made me kind of nervous. I mean, what,
From what I
Do we
gathered,
know?
from what I gather, is the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission has changed maybe the engineering on how they're agreeing to the requirements on engineering and how they're allowing interconnection agreement, a little bit I've been reading on that. The Minnesota Distribution Energy Resource Interconnection Process, they've changed that process
Right.
somehow, so that's created a lot of delays now on Excel.
They're
Apparently approving
reviewing
things.
Is it an environment? I mean, I just,
I don't know.
we have all of these out there and now we start getting these delays and I keep thinking, oh, Commissioner Hausman's night.
I think it's in the, I think it's in the connection.
Yeah.
Where they connect them.
Cause XL is federal, tied to federal program. That's why you like your Meeker co-op and them you can't hook to them, to their grids. But, so I think it's in that federal agreement in the state.
You go to the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission website.
It's no different than, your income tax from the state of Minnesota. It used to be a third of what you pay federally and now it's flip-flop, so Minnesota likes to add a lot of extra
Right.
things to our list.
So they're just asking for a year's delay. That's all you need a motion for.
Now, under our cup, they have to do something within that first year, and then they wouldn't have even had to ask for the extension.
Yeah, and I've been on the phone, I said if you even moved dirt and did a lot of dirt moving to get the site prep, it would be fine.
Yeah.
But they don't even wanna do that.
They wanna make sure
They
they're.
wanna make sure they get this agreement before
There
they
isn't a
stick
lot of,
anything in.
there ain't a lot of dirt to move with them projects either. I mean, it's kinda, they pound pipe in the ground and put a solar panel on
They
it.
could put fencing up too, but
Yeah.
they don't wanna stick any infrastructure.
They don't wanna invest
until-
any money till they're sure that what they're
Till
doing.
they're sure they got an agreement with Excel.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
All right.
I make a motion that CUP 15334 Solar Club 32, 1 megawatt solar farm extension granted.
We have a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, any additional questions?
Our new rules that are pending will not be qualified with this one, right? If we decide to have setbacks and stuff, this is already
This is already
grandfathered in.
under these conditions, yep. The CUP. Number 1. 5, 3, 3, 4.
Additional questions? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Very good.
He's gonna report that, the quarterback's gonna stay in Green Bay.
Oh,
Oh, is he? Did he decide to stay?
I'm just giving.
No comment. So, the only thing I have, two quick things today. First off, for those of you who are a part of it, we have a COVID policy meeting at 1 o'clock to talk about changes that have been made to the state's guidelines for social distancing and how we might want to make some changes here. And then we're coming up on me being employed with the county for 6 months. There's discussion with the board of establishing goals when we got to that point, and so I wanted to have a friendly reminder and allow you to have a discussion about how you may want to pursue that process.
Hit me with that again.
So there was discussion that when I've been with the county for 6 months, that the board would, at that time, look to establish goals for me as your administrator. And so we're coming up on that time frame. So end of June will be 6 months. And so I wanted to have that reminder and allow you to have that discussion. I've spoken with the personnel committee a bit about it. And so they may have some thoughts on how they would want to
So
proceed.
Andrew, we had a discussion the other day. Can you just read some of that? 'Cause
Yeah, so part of the thought, is I can help guide that process as much as you would like. I can provide it with structure, I can provide it with no structure, I can provide some ideas of goals, I can leave it all up to you as the board. One idea would be that the personnel committee would put together a list of goals and then bring that forward for discussion by the full board. See if there's anything else you'd want to add.
My idea was that we would have some input from Andrew. I think that's important, because he's got the inside view. And then the personnel meet with him on those goals and then bring them before the board. And if you guys have input, I would like to see contact Paul or I. Then in the end, we'll bring it before the full board, because when we do Andrew's review, we will do it. I think we agreed, last year that from now on, the administrator's review would be done in closed session with the whole board. I think, Steve, didn't we? We talked about that. Anyway, that's what I'd like to see happen. If
I
everybody's
can't say,
okay.
I don't know for sure.
But I think that's a good idea, that we do that.
I do too.
That way everybody has.
And
So, unless you have another idea how you'd like to proceed, that would be what I would think would work. I think it's important that Andrew knows where he's at after 6 months and what he sees that he can accomplish as a goal, and then each of us have some ideas. Like I might say, you know, you gotta get the budget down to 20 million. I might say that.
Now, is this is, just because you're a new person, we would do this at 6 months. But beyond that, is this an annual review? Have these things been done annually with the
The
administrator?
reviews have always been done, never in closed session. There was no reviews being done at all a few years ago, so the personnel committee has always met with the administrator and done a review through the HR, which never worked, by the way, for the commissioners. That doesn't work for us. We would have to go over that sheet and try to make, I would like this to be kind of separate from what you're doing. So it was determined, I just think it's a more fair process for everyone if the whole board is involved when we do the review. It's fair for Andrew and it's fair for the commissioners. I mean, I don't know how you.
And that's what I've typically seen in my career, is that the full board is doing the review of the administrator. Typically done in closed session so that we can all feel free to say what it is that we want to say. The open meetings law does allow for us to
Take off
do
my
that.
The word friendly might have been presumptuous.
When it was, Brian and I, we worked with HR to get formed together, and then the previous administrator filled it out, and then we sent questions to all the commissioners, and they filled it out kind of, and like with a number, oh, does he do this, that, or the other thing, and we would still do that ahead of time, I guess, some of it, I just think different questions, probably. And I don't know that we ever listed goals, I don't recall doing that, maybe, we must have, yeah, we did, but.
Would this be coordinated with Raquel and with the personnel committee?
Personally, I don't know if Mikel, in my opinion,
Have HR representation during those meetings?
The reason that happened that way before was because we could, you know, we had that HR, what's it called? What's our system called where we do our
Performance Pro.
Performance Pro? And to be honest with you, that did not work for the administrator. I mean, it doesn't, it works for some, but in our opinion, didn't for the administrator. So that's what, I can see where it would be an issue, work with her that way. I was talking about forming the questions or getting somebody to type them up.
How do you get the perspective of the employees that are under you as far as the review goes? I mean, because we can see it ourselves in terms of what has happened, but as far as, you know, morale purposes, you know?
Well, what we do in other
I'm just
boards,
curious.
for instance, Woodland, Danny,
Yeah.
we send out to certain managers, maybe the big department heads, where they also have some input. I don't know what you think.
I've seen that as well.
I think
Yeah,
that's-
I've seen that where department heads will have answered, you know, a question or two about the performance of the administrator. It's done confidentially, and then that information is shared with the full board. So.
But I think maybe we're getting the cart before the horse, because this 6-month thing is supposed to be a thing between, now correct me if I'm wrong, between personnel, you and this board, to set your goals, so that's 6 months, and here's how we're thinking you're doing, and what do you see? So that's 6 months from now, when we do your review, we have all that information. That's when we have the closed session, right?
Exactly, yeah, my goal with this is I just wanna make sure I'm focusing in the areas where the 5 of you would like me to focus.
That's what this is for.
Yeah.
I think it is
Structure,
important when we do this
Exactly.
regular review, that we hear from some of the bigger departments, probably.
at least his direct reports,
Right,
the people who report directly.
right. I think that's always a positive thing to do. If you
Yeah, we don't
I
wanna, come at a year and for 6 months Andrew hasn't had any direction from us.
So this is-
It's cohesiveness between the board and the administration,
So this is for the 6 months
so your target.
to
you
get something in
target
place
together.
for you.
Exactly.
So how would you guys like to do it is the question.
Would you like Beth said, we'll come up with some ideas with Andrew and then shoot them all and then we can sit down and talk about it, or do you have another idea?
Who sits on the personnel committee? You, Well, and Beth.
I mean, I think it's important to get every commissioner's input for goals, so whether you wanna do that in a public setting or shoot an email.
Who are the other people on the personnel committee? Who comprises the personnel committee?
So most personnel committee meetings include Commissioners Johnson and Oberg, and then myself and Mikkel are the other two who typically sit in on those meetings, and then we'll bring in department heads as necessary as we
I
deal
see.
with certain issues.
And to be clear, we don't meet very often with.
No.
Normally,
It's as needed.
it's a lot less than it used to be before, and normally it's when a resolution has been reached with an employee or something, or if we have some litigation or something. Mostly it's just updating us on the information.
Yep.
Mostly it's handled by McKellen. Sometimes Brandy's involved, not always. So how would you like to proceed?
Well, I think that's, if you guys wanna come up with a strategy between the personnel committee or some questions or something you want us to put some
And
input.
if you have some input.
Yeah,
And then,
Please
and
shoot
we'll,
us
yeah.
and you will get some things together.
Yep, I'll send you, the two of you an email early this week with, a list of goals that I've come up with, and we can use that as a starting point.
Good.
And will Mikkel be included in this if she has ideas for questions or procedures, or
Probably not in this part.
I wouldn't
I
say
don't think
in
at
the
this point.
6 month, no.
she wouldn't be involved in the 6-month part, but
Correct.
the year
She
part?
may not ever be involved like before, because if we change, we had nowhere to go, and actually apology, Brian and I kind of put her, sometimes we also worked with Randy, because, you know, it was just a unique position that we were all in, so this, we wanted to start fresh and get the board involved when we do the final, and I don't know how Randy would, or how, I'm sorry, Randy, how, Mikkel would be involved in that.
What I think we can do is if we wanna create a different, process for me from the rest of the organization, Mikkel can be involved in helping to develop
That's
that
what
process.
And getting the
But
questions.
beyond that, yeah, we make sure you guys aren't asking anything illegal.
Yeah. Would we need to at this time set up, a work session then for the last Tuesday of June, or when?
I think we can talk, I'll talk with, the personnel committee and we can determine where we think this is going and what level of discussion is gonna require by the full board. So we are gonna have a work session at the end of June. We have a few items on the agenda already, so we could certainly add this to that agenda as well, depending
You
where we're
take a
at.
month off of work sessions, maybe in July, so I can, maybe we can all get a little vacation. I'm gonna go to Florida maybe.
I think July, we don't have anything on the schedule for.
Maybe we can have them, I'm just saying, maybe we can.
Oh, wait, no, I take that back. We do have something on the schedule.
Oh, okay.
Maybe September,
Okay, well,
maybe October.
I guess nowhere is it written, we all have to come to the work session if we have something else.
Correct.
Very good.
All right, anything else, Andrew?
That's all I have. Oh, yes, that's all I have.
Okay, so that was the administrator's report. Now we have our Board of Commissioners committee updates. Anyone want to get the party started?
Sure.
Or do I
I've only
start,
got one thing to
or?
report on.
Okay, Paul?
And that was our CPT meeting, the county's providing technology. And they gave us a little demonstration of the human resource, the HR program that they use. But, you know, just like all demonstrations go, everything went absolutely perfect in the demonstration.
Uh-oh.
And we also know that there are some significant issues. Andrew and I have been talking about those, and they claim they're working on them. We're a little bit discouraged with the trouble ticket process they use. I mean, it's hard to see it. If it really is there,
It's hard to see the ticket.
yeah.
Yeah, it's only internal to CPT.
It's wide.
It's only internal to CPT, so,
Oh.
the complaint is that users on the county side, they'll submit a ticket for something, but they don't know what the status is, because they can't
So
see.
they can't look in and see that it's been read or,
Correct.
oh, that's probably not good.
Now, one thing they are doing is, they're coming back to work. This is, last week and this week was the start of their transition. There'll be no more them not working from the office, which may very well improve things. You know, now you're all back under one roof, and I don't know how you would, in that particular case, how do you monitor work product? How much work is being done by an individual working from home in that type of a setting? It's gotta be difficult.
I think there's a way to, I think that my sister was a network analyst that worked from home all the time, but they had a way of knowing when how much work she was
You
doing.
can see if they're online.
Right, so I suppose, not only that, but I think, there was a process, like I worked on this for 5 Oaks, so obviously you could go back and find out whatever, I would assume they have something like that going on.
You can tell if you're on your computer and.
The only other meeting I had was on Thursday night, was UCAP, and you guys saw the UCAP presentation. There's no point in me reporting on a meeting from UCAP. That's my 5:30 start time, once a month. And they have a 200-page packet. So-
He calls at 8 o'clock, the poor cats haven't eaten yet, they're waiting for him to get done with this meeting.
Yeah, I gotta keep them awake, cause if I happen to have my video on, I don't see.
You brought home the puppy yet?
But that's it for me.
So I can go next, I didn't have anything. I had a shelter meeting scheduled and I was not feeling well, and as it turned out, no one was, so they couldn't get a quorum, so we didn't have a meeting. And then I had a couple small meetings, with personnel stuff, that was it. This was very slow times.
Do we still have a dog pound here out at the wastewater plant? Do we still take animals there, or are they all taken to
Now we take
Wilmer?
them there for, is it 72 hour hold?
Something like that.
And if they're not claimed and paid for, they take them over to the shelter.
In Wilmer?
Yeah,
Wilmer, okay.
Hot Creek.
Are they still needing puppies or kittens, or there
Well,
was?
we don't need kittens.
No, you don't need to get, I was wondering. I've
We
got
need
a
to
few
fix
kittens.
some cats, but we don't need any kittens.
Okay. All right, well, anything else?
No.
Okay, I can go next. Wednesday, May 19th, I had my public health, it's the 3-county committee meeting, that was at 8 o'clock in the morning. Dr. Searle and Diane Winter are a part of that with me. Public health, they updated and streamlined what they call their post-exposure policy. This has to do with if an employee gets stuck by a needle, or how to handle medical equipment, various dangerous situations. So the committee viewed the policy and that was approved. Then we had a COVID update. There have been 2,500 cases, 40 deaths, and 150 hospitalized since the beginning of the pandemic back in March of 2020. Public health is now concentrating on watching variant strains of this original virus. And they're waiting to see if a booster will be needed. That's the next point of discussion. They offered some clinics at schools, trying to get the schools before they recessed for summer. Very low numbers of cases and very low takers of shots at the schools. Litchfield and Eden Valley Watkins were the only two that participated, and they had about 50 students take shots. The hospital, family fair, and Walmart still continue to offer shots. If anyone cares to go in, they're available. All essential workers have been vaccinated. Prime West, now you serve on that, Paul?
Yes, Beth.
Prime, and, okay,
Partner, I'm the second alternate, I should say.
they said a huge thank you to Prime West from the 3-county public, from the public health people, because Prime West paid for that postcard that was sent to all Meeker County residents, and it was really nice. It was very well done, and they wanted to be certain that Prime West was given a big thank you for that. Litchfield was going to offer a migrant workers clinic. They did so, they had an interpreter, and they felt the clinic was very well done. Dassel, kudos to Dassel, their industrial park facility offered a clinic for area residents and manufacturing workers. There again, it went well. And Watkins was at the time planning a walk-in clinic. There have been federal grant dollars to the tune of $211,000 that have been received. They've been used to offset advertising costs, to help pay workers, give shots, and any equipment that was needed. So that has been dispersed. They were planning a clinic for May 21st at the Health Services Building. There were going to be 80 vaccines available. I haven't heard how that went. 2 people have retired from public health. 1 person has been hired. The second position is now being discussed with Paul Bukovich. They are hoping to use this position to assist public health and social services. So Paul is in conversation with public health to fill that position. Dr. Searle is the chair of our local public health board. He offered some very interesting information about the vaccine that is now being used, about the hesitancy of people to get a shot, and a lot of the false information that is floating around. And he made a little presentation. I'd like to share that with you. I found it very interesting. Dr. Searle told us that the vaccine has been used for COVID viruses for actually 18 years. It was developed in 2003. At that time, it went through all the hoops, the testing. The data has been collected on this COVID virus since 2003. COVID vaccine came from this vaccine, which was originally used to prevent SARS and MERS. Remember that? MERS and SARS, those were 2 viruses in the early 2000s. They were able to take that, add a couple of proteins for Corona-19 strain, and Dr. Searle said he feels it has been very effective. So that was our science lesson for the day. He did a nice job of explaining that for us. That was the public health meeting. That same day, Wednesday, May 19th, I then participated in the Association of Minnesota Counties Government 101 class. It was called Budget Formulation. There were several speakers, a variety of methods and timelines from various counties around the state of how they go about putting together their budget. That was all addressed. They also talked about how do you work from home situations, the mask mandates, the need for additional broadband, and how the American Rescue monies are being spent. There were 61 participants. We were all on Zoom, and Andrew and Paul were with me in that session. So I don't know if you had anything to add to that. Then I would like to bring forward something I noticed. Do we all receive this? Do you guys all get this little newspaper? Well, on page 4.
Apparently you're the only one that read it.
I figured so I thought I would bring it and share this with
Just
you.
being honest.
Yeah, I know I did, I'll be honest.
Okay, you made the paper, here we go. More than 40 individuals from Minnesota counties participated in the NACO Leadership Academy, which is a 12-week online program that empowers frontline county government employees with fundamental leadership skills. 40 individuals from Minnesota, and I would like to congratulate our Steve Schmidt as a graduate of that, a commissioner from Meeker County. So congratulations, you recently graduated with the High Performance Leadership Academy. So kudos to Steve.
Which is also your first
Now I
graduation.
do. They have a degree. I suppose you're gonna get paid more for that.
You can move your tassel from one side to the other.
There you
It was a good course.
Congratulations.
Very good.
course.
So
I was actually, they solicited, I don't know how I got solicited for it back last year. And then as COVID was going on, I declined. And actually I got it, somehow I got it done for free too. It's a $2,000 course to the county, but I ended up, they asked me if I'd take in January. So I took it from January till April, I think 15th. when we were done.
Yeah.
But it was a very good course.
Yeah, and I thought that was very nice. They listed the individuals who had completed it.
See,
and it
now
was-
I'm gonna have to read the paper more often.
Yeah, I know.
So Steve was included in that, so. And then my final comment, I went to Steve Dill's celebration of life on Saturday morning, and many people came up to me, and this happens in the grocery store and out for supper. People sought me out to say how what they've been hearing, what they've been seeing, and what, it was just a kudos to all of us. How did I write this down? A thank you, and to commend the board, because people have been coming and saying that the tone of cooperation and open discussion it's a compliment to this board, and I wanted to share those good comments with all of you, and thank you for that going out into our community. It's a positive thing. People are coming and saying that they have good feelings about our commissioner board. So thank you for that.
Thanks for sharing.
Yes, yes.
And I gotta commend Julie too. She found your name in there. I read that thing cover to cover.
You were just looking for Paul Johnson though, right? I'm not in here. Right in the recycling.
Political part, I don't know, it's like the advertiser, we're garbage. I'm gonna start reading mine a little.
I read the front page, I read a little bit.
I always told my children when the Weekly Independent came out, I was so proud of them. I didn't read their name in the sheriff's report.
Yeah.
So proud of you boys, yeah. Well, that is the end of my report, but I thought I'd end it on a couple of really nice comments, so,
Thank you.
yes, very good.
I didn't have any committee meetings. We just had one meeting. Beth, myself, Andrew, and Paul B. had a meeting about Woodland Centers, about going forward, how to, what's it called, the POS.
We
Which-
talked about our purchase of service and
Yep.
some things.
That was it for me.
POS. My
Purchase
children-
of service,
well,
yeah.
my children
It
called
can,
my
it's
car
named the
saying
other way
that.
too,
Yeah. When-
but I don't know if I should say
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
I would say that anyway.
This
Point of
acronym's-
sale, is that?
A point of sale, yeah. Thanks for recovery. But that's all I had. I had nothing else.
Steve?
I had, no, we did not. The
Okay.
EDA was
Last time.
prior. That was your last report. I had a drug task force meeting and I found out that I know very little about drugs. They had, I mean,
That's a good thing.
Being that you're not a doctor, that's
I
a very good
didn't
thing.
pick up really well, so.
Wasn't that in that article?
Yeah.
That's
There
on
was,
page 5.
Yeah.
but they ran down and it's regional drug task force, right? So it's Candy and Meeker and I think Renville and I'm not sure. Swift, okay. And anyway, they run through the the list of things that are confiscated in the past quarter and things, and there's it's amazing what's out there, and I don't know what most of it is. I mean, you could, but, there's a lot of good things. It's good to see that we're, getting some things done there in a positive manner in the communities, but also that they're gonna be short some dollars too coming up. Me and the sheriff talked about that a little bit afterwards, so they're gonna work on some, he's got some strategies there to address some of the shortfalls that are gonna be coming up. I think they're about $75,000 short on their budget, that department, so they're working on some strategies there. Then we had the special work session, and then I also had Grove City Care. Grove City Care is actually opening up, their doors a little bit more. They do a lot of, there's 17 residents there, or apartments, and they have always done a lot of community outreach, surrounding, elderly community comes in for potlucks and things like that. They haven't been able to do that. They're starting to be able to do that again, and they've had a lot of really good reception in the area. People are, that population is very happy to be out and about again. So everything is going well there. Then I also sat in, through NACO. I'm on the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee there, and, I sat in on one of them meetings, and basically nationally they're talking about the cost of building materials. Broadband, is another one, and then also, we're gonna have some input on, we're getting ready to start discussions on the 2022 Farm Bill. And, so that's something that'll be coming up, here in June as well, some of the preliminary discussions on that. And I think that is all I had.
I got a question for you, Steve. We've always had kind of a bad reputation when it comes to drugs, this area. Is it really predominant, far more? Remember now, I'm older, I don't run in the crowds like that and stuff, so I don't know. I hear it, but I never know if that's true or not.
What I've always heard, and I don't know if I can verify this through the task force or not, but Highway 12 is a pretty hefty corridor. That's where a lot passes through it.
That true?
So if anything falls off the truck.
I get the county attorney's take on this. Did I hear the same thing?
Yes, and the task force is devoted to chasing the drugs, so they're going to the sources. So they may find an informant here, using that confidential informant, and then chasing them to Mille Lacs or chasing them back to Hennepin. But they did have a very successful year in removing drugs off the street last year. It was one of their highest years. So while people were in their homes due to COVID, the drug task force was still out moving those drugs, putting pressure on the buyers and taking the big guys. I think we went federally with 2 or 3 cases, so the feds are working really well with the specialized agents. Meeker County specifically has an agent that's been very successful in working with the feds and getting that relationship. I think there might be some changes with another agent through the Meeker County Sheriff's Office, but it's very important that the search warrants are drafted a specific way so that based upon the drugs. And so they work closely also with the BCA, and so the BCA is in there helping them when they need to. The C6 task force is a large group of agents that each are designated to the task force from each sheriff's office and then police departments. Litchfield Police Department doesn't designate anyone, but they're available for resources if they want to come into Litchfield PD. But a lot of the drugs they were taking was methamphetamine is still king. There is some cocaine.
Any heroin?
They did, I believe they had a few heroin. I just reviewed their last year's numbers. I didn't review this last quarter. But we have a lot of big first-degree drug possessions, drug sale cases in Meeker County.
I think what surprises me is the that shouldn't surprise me, but the length that people go through to, I mean, I know for example, last year in Eden Valley, there was drugs being shipped into the post office, and then a person was flying in from California and then picking them up and moving them, and I mean, it's just,
In Eden Valley.
yes, and somebody in Eden Valley would then pick them up from the post office and bring them to their home, and then this person would fly in from like California, I think, or wherever, and then redistribute, and it's like, who thinks of all this stuff? I mean,
We have connections, let's say it would be,
Or more sophisticated than you'd ever think.
there's, citizens who have connections with cartel in Mexico, and so they're definitely pumping them up to Meeker County, Candiotite County. I mean, some of the things that the task force does is they find people who are out on warrants, they track gang affiliation, so they, mark anyone who's gang affiliated. They go in and do searches, and they went in, last year, I think it was in Candiotite County, but they actually found someone hiding in the ceiling. And so they do such a thorough search that they found someone just hiding in a crawl space in the ceiling. So the places that they're finding these things is absolutely unreal.
You talk about not knowing anything, so one day I come out with my dog, and I live in just a, average neighborhood. And so there's mostly families, but there's a fourplex down, and I see this big truck loading up this brand new pickup, and I thought, I bet that poor guy didn't make his car payments. So come to find out, it was a huge drug bust. They found this is 2 houses away from me. I never saw any noise over there. There was like, I think $70,000 in cash. And about 3 days later, this guy had just bought this as an income property. He's out there putting new sheetrock in, so I'm assuming they tore the apartment apart, and I had no clue, none. I didn't see unusual trap, not that, I go to bed at 10 o'clock, but nothing. I just thought the guy didn't make his payments, but I guess they took his truck. And I read about it in the paper, I had no idea.
Oftentimes, the dealers aren't irresponsible users. They
No,
dabble
that's-
in using, but their
Right.
main goal is to
And I
make
think
income
this
off
has some
selling.
ties to Cosmos or something, but I'm like, oh my gosh.
I had this, I live next door to a couple in their mid-60s, I would say, that are both recovering NA
Right.
members, and they tell me stuff too that, I'm like, really? I said, I gotta sit in a different chair in my house to look out the window the opposite way, because it's like, and then you check out what they tell you, and it's like, oh yeah, look at that. I mean, but I could walk by it 10 days in a row and not notice until somebody points it out to you, and
I'm the same way, or my kids will say, Mom, she's a tweaker. I'm like, what's that mean? That's really nice. Mom, she's a tweaker. I'm like, oh, okay, well, whatever, She seems like a nice person to me.
I do know what that is. From
Yeah, well,
on,
I know
on
now.
Rescue Squad, I can tell you, I understand what that is.
I'm old.
Are you ready for a motion?
I would entertain a motion to adjourn unless there is further business that needs to come before us.
So moved.
Second, Madam Chair.
Second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, we will adjourn.
And is Friday the hospital education?
Yes, that's Friday.
Noon, right?
So we got something every day.
You'll see it 1 or 1:30?
Wednesday.
1 or 1:30?